Good morning. Welcome to the informative webinar about the tender for CBI Market Intelligence Studies. This is the tender for 9 agri-food sectors of CBI. These 9 sectors are divided over 6 lots, and I will come back to that later. Some general things about this webinar. If you have audio problems, please try the phone call. And we cannot see or hear you. So if you have questions, you have to ask the questions via the questions tab on the right of your screen and the menu. My colleague Arthur and myself will do this webinar. So I'll go to the contents of this webinar for today. We'll start with an overview of the tender, and then we'll start with the information on who are we looking for this tender. So we give you a tender profile, and then my colleague Arthur will tell you something about CBI and specifically about CBI Market Intelligence. We have finally some tips for the tenderers. So how to make a quick start, what are the important things when you start a tender. And then we have the planning. So from today till the deadline, what is happening and what we expect from you and what can you expect from us, of course. And we'll finally try to answer all your questions that you have until now. So after today, you know more about the content and planning of our tender. You know whether your skills and knowledge are matched with CBI, and you know more about CBI and in particular the Market Intelligence Department. So to give you a little more context, we'll start with the mission of CBI. Our mission is to support the transition towards inclusive and sustainable economies. So we strengthen the social, economic, and environmental sustainability of small, medium enterprises in developing countries by connecting them to the European and regional markets. And with that mission, we specifically try to promote and create decent jobs, and we pay special attention to women and youth. We stimulate sustainable production and trade, and we have a priority in corporate social responsibility teams in our projects that are decent work, gender, youth, and climate. And with that work, we support the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So first is the tender overview. So what is the tender about? This tender has 6 lots, which are 9 sectors. So the first lot is coffee and tea. Those are 2 CBI sectors. Second lot is fresh fruit and vegetables. The third lot is natural ingredients for cosmetics, which is divided in 3 different sectors: natural ingredients for health products, natural ingredients for cosmetics, and natural food additives. The fourth lot is processed fruit and vegetables and edible nuts, which is 1 sector at CBI. And the 5th lot is grains, pulses, and oilseeds. It's also 1 sector within CBI. And the 6th lot is spices and herbs, which is also 1 sector in CBI. Tenderers can register for a maximum of 3 lots, and they can be awarded as the main contractor or a part of a consortium, a maximum of 2 lots. And this is based on the highest number of points. But as a subcontractor, you can always join more lots. You can read more about it in the tender document itself. So for each lot, there's an estimated value. It's not a promise, it's an estimate we have now based on the past. So these, you can read here the estimates for it's the estimate over 4 years. When you win the contract, you get a contract for 3 years with the possibility to extend for 1 more year. We can divide the maximum of 100 points. So you can be scored on quality preferences, which you can win 70 points, and you will be scored on the financial preferences, which will be 30 points. Within the quality preferences, and I will show you more about it later, we ask for a description of the market research team, we ask for a research approach, and we have a writing assignment based on a document, and then we score your analytical and writing skills. So what we ask for you when you have won the contract, then you ask you to deliver a lot of deliverables for CBI, and mainly market studies. So the deliverables we ask from you once you've won the contract are very specifically described in the terms of references for CBI market studies. This is in okay, sorry, I was a bit distracted. So you're going to read this in Annex 9. So it very specifically describes the context of the deliverables we asked, the assignment. So for each deliverable, there's a couple of pages where we describe what we expect from this deliverable. We describe the criteria and the working process. So in order for you to know what we expect from you once you've won the contract, it's very important that you read this terms of references, Annex 9 in the tender documents. The CBI deliverables we expect from you are the sector studies. And these can be found already on the website to know what kind of studies these are. What's the demand, trend study, and a study about the buy requirements. For each sector, it's a different study. And then we have product fact sheets, specifically about one product in the sector. We have country fact sheets. We have tip studies, finding buyers, doing business, how to organize your export, how to benefit from digitalization, and we call it the digital tips. And for the next year, we have 2 new studies that are not yet on the website. That is how to apply environmental sustainability and how to make your business socially sustainable. And then we have other deliverables. So these are the news articles related to studies. And we sometimes can ask a live presentation from you about studies. And we will ask from you to do live webinars about some studies or subjects. And other deliverables are the focus group and the online focus group. So these are deliverables that we are not going to ask from you every year, but maybe every 2 years. So what are we instead? So the deliverables are very well described in the terms of reference, which you can find in Annex 9 from the tender documentation. It's very important for you to know what we expect from you once you've won the contract. So who are we looking for this tender? We are for market researchers, consultants, and sector experts. And we expect when you want to submit a proposal, you need to have experience in writing market studies and articles about the European market for the specific sector you want to tender for. So we ask also interviewing skills and statistical skills. That means you have to know about import and export statistics and how to get those statistics out of Eurostat, for example, and ITC. And we ask from you quantitative research skills. And of course, our target group are the small and medium enterprises in developing countries. So you need to write specifically for them in understandable English, and also with good tips for those small and medium enterprises in developing countries. So it's also needed for this work that you have sector knowledge, and it's very handy if you have an international network in the sector, so you can consult those people to make your studies even more valuable. Lastly, we ask for skills in organizing focus groups with European stakeholders and skills in presenting content to the target group. So we are looking for suppliers that possess the mentioned skills as an individual or as a team. So you don't need to have them all by yourself. You can form a team. And you can also, in that team, it can be from your own company, of course, but it's also possible to do that in collaboration with others. And you can do it as a consortium. So you're both responsible for part of the work, or as a main contractor with subcontractors. So think about the form you want to enter this tender. I will now give the word to Arthur, who will talk more about CBI and specifically the market intelligence sector department. Arthur, are you there?
Yes, Thomas, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so welcome on behalf of me. I will be introducing a little bit more about CBI market intelligence. As you could see in the invitation to this webinar, the webinar would be originally presented by Maya Sewpersad. Unfortunately, she's ill today, so I'm replacing her. So in this part, which is particularly for people that are not familiar with CBI yet, I will be telling a little bit more about CBI as an organization and the deliverables that we will be asking in this tender. So first of all, let me start a little bit by introducing the team. So this is the market intelligence team. So we have 14 sectors which are divided among the different program managers. So in case that you will win a lot for the coming 4 years, it will be very likely that this will be your contact persons. Then the target group of our studies. We write our studies as it is in the name, CBI, Center for the Promotion of Imports of Developing Countries, for suppliers in developing countries, and particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises that aspire to export to the European Union. And I have here a couple of examples of the people that read our studies and what they've said about CBI. For example, Mr. Malik, a grain spills and oilseeds company from Pakistan, wrote that he had no clue that his markets eventually would be Belgium, Germany, France, and the Netherlands, and that's something that he picked up from our studies. So as said, the target group is small and medium-sized enterprises for developing countries, and we write predominantly about the European markets, and we define Europe as the EU 27, plus the United Kingdom, plus the EFTA countries. And developing countries we define as all the countries that are on the OECD DAC list of ODA recipients. By the way, all the links, we will send the presentation afterwards, and all the links are clickable, as you can see here. And once in a while, we also have references on the slides. So that's it in terms of target group. Then it's important to mention that the CBI market information is just a small part of what CBI does. So on the left-hand side of the slide, you see a screenshot of the website, which is the homepage of the market information. And it's important to mention that in the 14 sectors altogether, on average in a year, we publish around 250 to 300 market studies for this group of entrepreneurs from developing countries. They're open to everybody, so you don't need a login or anything. You can just open the studies and read them and use them as you would like. And that information you can see is available on cbi.eu/market information. And then the bigger part actually of what CBI does is projects. So we do development projects in developing countries. To be exact, in 24 countries we can work at the moment. And there we do coaching, consulting, we help with sustainability challenges. So we work with coaches that work on the ground to help companies to export to Europe. And so the companies that are being helped in these projects, they also make use of the market information on the website. And next to that, we also have tailored research or project-specific research, but that is not part of this tender. So for today, we only focus on the standard research that we publish on the website. And then our readers. This is an overview of our readership in 2021. And it's important to note that 43% of our users come from developing countries. So that is again the countries of the OECD DAC list. And it's also nice to mention that 20% of our readership comes specifically from the country we work in. So in this top 10, for example, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Kenya. In total, we are read and used a lot. So we had in 2021 over 2 million page views. Then a little bit about how we work. So if you haven't seen our website yet, after this session, I really recommend that you visit our website, cbi.eu/market information, to see all the studies and all the work that we create. As said, we do that for 14 sectors. And per sector, you will see a homepage with different studies. We have sector information, we have studies on particular products, as you can see here as well. And it's nice to mention that we only create studies if it's a product from a developing country. So that has potential, that is produced and exported from a developing country. Then we make sure that our website has easy access, so it works on slower computers and particularly on smartphones. Also an important part of the standard, we procure to write the studies in as easy as possible English, so that's level B1. And the study should be very practical and hands-on, so with lots of tips of consultants and tips of importers included in the studies. Other deliverables that we work on in cooperation with our suppliers is that we organize webinars. So webinars often are about one particular study, and then it's deepened out. So we let the market researchers present the study in collaboration with, for example, people from the practice. So that's European importers that tell about how what they find important. Another deliverable that we do in collaboration with our market researchers is the live presentation, and that's often on a trade fair. There's also an example over here on the right-hand side. Basically the same as a webinar. We present one or more studies, and we have the possibility to interact with the audience who can ask their questions. And lastly, what we also do is focus groups. So the focus group is a half-day offline session with stakeholders from the sector. And this is something that we do prior to a study, so it's part of the research process. So we put together, as you can see in the picture, lots of experts in a certain field, and we discuss the trends, we discuss anything that changes, developments, anything about the requirements, with the goal to gather, exchange, analyze, interpret, and validate information for the studies. And we also do those focus groups sometimes online. The research method and working process. It's important to note, if you are going to respond to this tender, that we work mainly with interviews of European buyers, industry associations, sector experts. So that's an important part of the primary research that we expect from our suppliers. And secondly, it's important to note that the tender is for 4 years maximum, and the way we work during those 4 years is that every year we put out an assignment for the work that for the research of that particular year within the scope of the tender, and we follow a 12-step working process that starts with contracting and defining the topics for that year, the proofreading, the planning, the invoicing, and finally the publication. So I suggest you also look these 2 elements up in the tender documentation. That's chapter 3.2 for the research method and 7.4 for the working process. And that's a little bit more about CBI and about the way we work. And now I'll give back the word to my colleague Thomas, who will continue with the tips for tenderers. So now I'm giving it back to you, Thomas. Are you there, Thomas?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. And you can see my screen. Very well. So I will start with the tips for tenderers now. I heard my sound was not very good in the first part. Is it better now? Can Arthur?
Yes, it's still a little bit squeaky.
Okay, I'll did some things, but
yeah,
I hope
but
you still
I think it's a little bit better. If it's yeah, if it worsens, we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. So we continue with the tips for the tenderers. So if you're interested, so make sure you go to TenderNet and download all the documents, but also you first have to create, and do that as soon as possible, a TenderNet profile. So you have to register and create a profile. Otherwise, you cannot submit a proposal. And you can download all the tender documentation and the annexes and prepare for the tender by reading that, of course. And then you can, there are some parts you have to write for the award criteria. We'll come back to that later. And of course, you have to submit your tender in English. You can read about the requirements to this assignment in chapter 3 and 4 of the tender doc. And the writing assignment, the award criteria and assessment is described in chapter 5 of the tender doc. So we've made a checklist just for you to know, because we know it's a very a lot of annexes and a very big tender document. So we've made like a summary of with a checklist, so that you know specifically what we expect you to upload on TenderNet and what we expect you to really write. So you can find this checklist in chapter 7, 3.15, page 34 of the tender doc. So first of all, it's very important that you enter the European Single Procurement documents. It's Appendix 1. You have to fill it in, legally sign, and add it to TenderNet. We'll come back to that later, how to fill it in some parts. And secondly, of course, this is how you scored. You're scored on the award criteria. part of that are 3 documents. So we ask you to write documents, preferably in Microsoft Word, for description of the research team, which will be working on the tender once you get the tender awarded. We want to know about your research approach, and note that already in the requirements we describe some parts of the setup of the research which are requirements. For example, we require you to do a minimum of 2 interviews per study. So there's some parts of the research approach are already like a requirement which is described. And then we ask to give your research approach in general, which we will score. And we have made for each sector a different writing assignment. So with that writing assignment, we will score how your analytical skills and also your writing skills, for example, in B2 English. So read that carefully and submit as 3 separate documents into TenderNet. And then, of course, we ask you to give your prices. And so if you are if you're submitting a proposal for a lot with one sector, you have to make a price list for every deliverable and make that. So the appendix 2 is the price list. You have to fill in your prices for every deliverable of that sector and add it to TenderNet. If you're entering for a lot with 2 sectors, you have to add 2 price lists for each of 3 sectors for 3. So for each sector, a price list, and add that to TenderNet. So also note that we, of course, part of the assignment later on will be to make a new study or to update an existing study. So for the price list, we only ask you to give your prices for the new studies. So apart from that, then you also have to, we ask you in section 4.3.5 to upload also a reference study as a requirement. And then that's what you have to do for this tender. Once the tenders are awarded, we are going to ask the initial winners to upload some more evidence. But for the first part, you need to upload these documents which are in the checklist. Very important. So just some more information about this European Single Procurement Document. Then this is a print screen from that. If you want to add, if you want to participate as a consortium, then you have to put in here yes. If you are a single organization or a single organization with subcontractors, then you have to put here no. So why? If you put if you are a consortium, then both parties of the consortium have to fill in a European Single Procurement Document. If you're a subcontractor, then you don't need to make a European Single Procurement Document. So it's a note that it's about responsibility. So your choice or doing with subcontractors or a part of a consortium. It also depends on the workload that each is doing. So if you want somebody as a subcontractor but with a very big workload, we advise you to make him a consortium. But of course, it's your choice. It's about responsibility. So if you enter with subcontractors, you have to put in yes here and then fill out here the names of the subcontractors. And we also expect that each subcontractor is part of the research team you filled out in the award criteria. Okay, then we finally go to the planning. On August 18th, we published this tender. So you can already download all the documents and read it. Maybe you've already done that. That's good. Today, 29th of August, we have the informative webinar, and tomorrow is the closure of the first round of questions. So if you have specific questions, you can ask some of the questions now in this tender, but also you can specific question about, you can fill in via TenderNet. You have to ask the questions, and we'll be answering them by issuing a first memorandum of information on September 8th. Then we have another round of questions, so you can ask more questions later on. And that's the deadline for that is 20 September, and we will be issuing the second memorandum of information, so the answer to those questions, on September 30. Then on October 14th, 1 o'clock Central European Time, is the deadline for the receipt of the tenders. So then we will go to look at all the tenders and give them a score, and we will make the announcement for the award of the contract on November 28th. And then our procurement department will ask you to hand in some more evidence if you are one of the winners. And the starting date of the contract is in January 23. Okay, then we'll go to the questions. So if you have any questions, so yeah, my colleague Arthur will join us now.
Hi, Thomas. Yes, we had many questions coming in as you were speaking. And I have a couple that I would like to ask you. Maybe this first question is already answered by your last slides, but maybe it's good just to repeat it once more. So the question is, what is the most common way of answering, of doing a proposal? Is that consortium or individual? And is there a preference on the CBI side?
No, there's not a real preference from CBI, but as I told earlier, it's also about responsibility and how you have divided the work. So we want to, for us, it's important that all the skills that we need for all the work and deliverables are part of the research team. And if you don't, as a company or as an individual expert, if you don't have all the expertise yourself, you need to find partners. And depending on the workload of the partner, you have to decide whether it's a consortium or a subcontractor. So if you're really dependable on the capacity and the expertise of a partner, then we advise you to make him a partner in a consortium. So that's about what you have to decide for yourself. We have not a real preference. For us, okay. It's important that all the skills are in the team.
Okay, that's clear. I have a very quick question that I'll answer myself in between before I'll shoot the next one to you, Thomas. So yes. The question is the duration of the project. Is it 3 years or 4 years? So this is maximum 4 years. So when you win the tender, you have 3 years, and then there's 1 year of extension. So that's the way you get to 4 years. And then the next question for you, Thomas. Is it recommended or even mandatory for the market research team to be based in Europe?
No, it's not mandatory. It's not recommended as well. But yeah, we ask expertise, we ask knowledge about the European market. So you have to know how to work with, for example, Eurostat. And so, yeah, you have to have knowledge about the European market. So that's the only requirement. So it's not mandatory to be based in Europe.
You're expected also additionally to have a network in Europe. So if you are based just outside of Europe or somewhere else on the globe, but you have a very good network of importing companies, of European importers that you can contact and that you can interview, where you can get your information, that is okay. But it is important to have knowledge about Europe and also a network. So, and then if you have both of these, then where you are based, it's not an issue. So I have more questions and they're still coming in. So this is also a nice question related to the first one. So this is a person that says that he is an independent consultant with knowledge of the sectors of olive oil and grains, but he's a freelancer, so not part of a consortium. Can he still place a bid? So I think we already answered that, so yes. So sometimes the winner is a freelancer, just one single person. More often we see consortiums, and sometimes we also see bigger companies that have all the skills in-house. So that this really depends on on your skills. If you have all the skills in-house yourself, then it's also possible. So we don't have any rules about that. Thomas, this is a question you can probably answer. One of the participants mentions that the tender is published twice on TenderNet. Which is the correct one?
Yes, we noticed that as well. Good for you to notice. The correct one will be the last one, so of August 18th.
Okay. And then can we apply from Lebanon? Yes, that's possible. We don't have any restrictions on where the suppliers should be based. And then a question about the content. Is the content, Thomas, is it country specific or can they have a regional approach?
It can have a regional approach, but I'm not exactly sure what is meant by this question.
Yeah, so we write about the European market. So you see, if I interpret, this is the way how I interpret the question, is that the topic you write about. So most of the studies are about Europe as a whole. So if you look into the tender documentation, I think it's Annex 9, which is the terms of reference. There you see all the studies that the winner of the tender will create, and there you see that many studies are basically about the whole of Europe. So if a study about trends, which is the trends in the whole of Europe, a study on demand, which is the demand in the whole of Europe. There's one study which we call a country fact sheet that is only about one country. So then we write only about Germany or only about France. But the majority of the studies are Europe. Have Europe as a target market. Let me see. The question about reference studies. Can the market research report be named as a reference, including value? I think this is quite a long question. So I'm proposing that we'll answer that in written. And I think it's maybe also a good moment that all the questions that we've answered right now, and also the ones that we answered via the chat earlier, we will publish this, the questions and the answers. I think tomorrow, as indicated in the planning, we have the end of the first round of questions. So these are questions that were answered via TenderNet, and we'll add as an annex as well all of the questions that were made today and answered today. Then there's also a second question. So this quite long question we will answer via in written.
Yes.
And then a question, we are active on the African continent only. Is it a must to be able to do research on all continents? Thomas, can you answer that question?
On all continents. Now, of course, if you look at our terms of reference, you will notice that we specifically ask for information about the European market. And to enter by SMEs from developing countries, and of course those SMEs from developing countries can be from all continents. That will be for CBI specifically Africa and Asia. Mm-hmm. But the information you write must be about the European market. So okay. The European import statistics, how to find buyers in Europe, all that kind of questions. I hope that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Then another question, this is about how many proposals you can make. Thomas, the question is, can an organization apply for 3 lots? As we indicated in the presentation, you can register for 3 lots. By the way, you can only win 2, so that's also important to mention straight away. But can they apply for 3 lots and be part of a consortium in the 4th lot?
Okay, I read here also a question. Apply for 3 lots and become a subcontractor in the 3rd lot, or maybe in the 4th lot. But yeah, the rules are you can, as a main contractor or a part of a consortium, you can apply for 3 lots and win 2 lots. But next to that, you can also be a subcontractor in another lot. So as a subcontractor, there's no maximum. As a main contractor or part of consortium, there is a maximum of 3 lots to apply and 2 lots to win. So in theory, you can apply for 3 lots, win 2 lots as a main contractor, and be a subcontractor in the 3rd lot. We will not be advising that because it's you need to do the work as well. But yeah, that's what's all possible.
Okay. Then we have a question about the planning, the deadline to submit the tender. Someone has read that the deadline to apply is the 30th of August. So that's not correct. Can you maybe please let us know again what is the deadline? Because I think we have just 1 or 2 months the time. What is the deadline to hand in your proposal?
Yeah, the deadline is. Let me go to the planning then. The deadline is the 14th of October. That's the actual deadline.
So okay, so there's 1.5 months still. So for that person, no, and you don't have to add it in tomorrow. You still have 1.5 months to prepare.
So the 30th of August. The 30th of August is only to submit your first your questions. If you have any questions about the tender, you can submit those questions within TenderNet, and we will answer them on 8th September at the latest.
And then there's a number of quick questions. Is there any preference on the sector CBI will want to look at? So that's part of the tender documentation. You will see that we will be looking at 9 sectors and that we've organized them in 6 lots. So please review this presentation and also download the tender documentation from TenderNet, and there you will see exactly which sectors we will be asking for. We still have many questions about where a company should be based. We've answered that, so there's no requirement where you should be based. So you do not have to be a European organization, but you do need experience and a network in Europe.
And also maybe add Brexit has no influence on this. So if you're in the UK, of course you can submit a proposal as well.
Yeah, that's correct. What happens in case a tenderer scores highest for 3 lots? How will the maximum of 2 lots be selected? Based on the maximum of points. So if you apply to 3 lots and you are the winner in 3 lots, you will be assigned the 2 lots where you had the highest score.
Yes, it's described in the tender doc as well, but we will when we will answer this in written as well and upload it.
And then we have another question. Is a retired management consultant like myself qualified to tender? I think it's important to know, yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're retired or not, but it does matter where you have an active company, because you still, of course, you need to send us invoices. So yeah, how do you view that question? Do you have any?
Yeah, I would say yeah. If you are a legitimate business and if you have the skills we ask, you can submit a proposal.
Yeah, and even as a subcontractor, then of course you will send your invoice to the main contractor. So there's more ways you can participate, but of course you need at least to be as we call in the Netherlands ZZP, which is in English, you have to be autonomous one person company at the least. Let's see. Then a question. If one of the researchers would like to make these studies, can he do it individually or can he make it all by himself? That is a related question to the ones we had previously.
Yes.
So if you have the capacity to do it all by yourself and you have all the skills, then it's no problem. And we've seen that with the last 4 years. We had 1 or 2 companies that were one-person companies that were able to do it. But more often we see bigger teams. I think that's fair to say, but it all depends on your skills, network, the time that you have available.
Yeah. Okay.
Another question, Thomas, maybe for you. Should we only work with open data, such as Eurostat, or should we build more data through a quantitative research process?
Yes, no, that's a good question. That can be part of your research setup proposal. But of course, there are some data we really need, and which you so import and export statistics. That you, especially for the agricultural sectors, it's available for most sectors. And you can also decide if, it can be useful maybe to do a quantitative research. It's for you to decide, and also for which part it has added value of the information we request. Of course, so we advise you to look at the terms of reference and the deliverables and what kind of questions we ask answers about. And it can be useful, but you have to decide for yourself.
Then we have another question. Any specific qualifications required for the organization and its consultants for applying to the tender? So let me answer that. We will send a presentation, and if you look on slide 16, we mentioned the requirements concerning the tenderer, and that's in the tender documentation chapter 4. So there are requirements. Please review that chapter, and then you can see what requirements you have to meet. Then let me see, can we do this is also a nice question, Thomas, maybe for you. Can subcontractors be changed or added during the contract period?
That's a very good question. If you have of course written your team, and if your team has subcontractors, they will be part of your team description, and it's we've also, it's in the tender doc somewhere, that during the contract, if you win the contract, if you want to change the subcontractors or add people to the regions team, you have to inform us about it. And we expect that the changes are made to the same qualifications and skills. So yes, it's possible to add more subcontractors. So if it's added, then just inform us. If it's a replacement, we also check if the same qualifications are there.
So then we have another question about TenderNet. Someone already tried to register and has a problem with the TAN code via the phone number. So this is not something that we manage directly. So TenderNet is the tender website of the Dutch government. They have a help desk. I will also send it to you. You can reach them either by email, servicedesk@tendernet.nl, or by phone, and they speak English. So they should be able to help you with your technical problem with registering. Then let's see. Then about the countries, there's a list of 24 CBI developing countries, and there's the OECD DAC list. Maybe Thomas, you can tell a little bit. The question is, India is not on the list, but it is on the OECD DAC list. Would it have any implications? So how does that work in the CBI studies?
Yeah. Okay, Arthur told something about CBI and how we are organized, and also that we do market information and we have projects. And so the list of 24 CBI focus countries is based on those countries we can start new projects. So that's very different from the market information suppliers and our market information. The target group for our market information are all small and medium enterprises in the OECD list. So it has no implication on evaluations. You have anything to add to that, Arthur?
No, not at this point. So we have still questions coming in, so I'm just going on with the next one, which is about use of data. Will there be any data from CBI for the research? So are we supplying any data for to the suppliers, or are we expecting the winning supplier to source all of the data themselves and to engage with, for example, sector organizations? So clear the question?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah. Of course, we have written the deliverables, what we expect from our suppliers to part. So we expect our suppliers to find all the information and the data. So we do not provide any data, if that's your question.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do not provide any data, but it is, yeah, it's part of the research process. As this person has indicated, we expect the researchers to gather their own data. And that can be free data, such as mentioned Eurostat or ITC data, but it can also be paid data. That depends on. We also see suppliers that take subscription to source data. That's all possible, but it's a responsibility of the supplier. Let me see. So one question, just to be sure, the market intelligence is focused on the buyer market, on the demand side, and not on the supplying market, developing countries.
Sorry.
So the CBI research, it's focused on the buyer side, on the European side, and not on the supplier markets, on the developing countries. So that's correct. Also, are there? Yeah, this is a good question. So, is there a focus on certain products or crops under the different lots? So, let me answer that. So that's a good question. So first of all, yeah, your first remark is correct. So we write about the buyer market, about the demand from Europe, and not so much about supplier markets. We write for them, but not about them, to make that clear. And then the focus on certain crops and products, we have what we call a product tree. So that's a long list of products that you can write about. So we made a little bit of a pre-selection of products that we include and that we do not include. And that is what we said, we only write about products that have potential in developing countries. And that's actually a little bit of pre-research that CBI has done for the suppliers. And
Oh, Arthur. I do not hear you anymore. Oh.
Okay, can you hear me now?
You were freezed for a moment, Arthur.
Okay,
you're back again.
So the list of products that for each sector that we focus on, that is given to the winner when they start doing their work. I'm not sure if it's part of the tender documentation. We will check on that and answer that later. What is expected in terms of investment of the supplier regarding graphic design and the development of high charts and maps? Do you want to answer that, Thomas, or should I answer it?
Please, that will be a good question for you, Arthur.
So we do not expect graphic design to be done by the companies that react to this tender. So we make use of high charts and high maps, which is software that CBI offers that is paid by CBI. So all of the interactive charts that you see in the studies, we supply the software for that. So there's no cost for suppliers. Graphic design, we don't do a lot of graphic design because we work in a standard template, but sometimes it's necessary to create a nice image or a chart, and we have our own graphic designer that we can use. So there's no cost for the supplier there either. And then we have photos in the studies, and there's two options for photos. One is paid for photography, and there we will provide the winning supplier with a budget to buy pictures. And on the other hand, next to that, we also stimulate to use free of charge pictures. So I think that's, so in sum, we do not expect any costs for graphic design and photos to be taken up in the proposal. That is already covered.
Okay. I have here a question. To what extent will CBI tailored market intelligence with markets outside Europe be part of future packages in market analysis studies in the framework of the contract? Yeah, so this is about tailored market studies. So you could say that any study which is not described in the terms of references is not part of this tender. So sometimes we do tailored market studies, which is a specific study, and then we have the freedom to ask other suppliers outside the framework contract as well. but sometimes we just turn to our framework contract supplier. So that depends on the kind of tailored study it is. But I see here example, exporting green coffee from Guinea to Moroccan markets. Yeah, this can be a specific study, but so that's we have there some freedom if it's not specifically part of the terms of reference and deliverables described in this standard doc.
Okay, so we almost reached the end of this session. I have one more question, which is a good question for us to think about. And the question is it possible to apply to the same lot in different ways? For example, one time as a main contractor and the second time as a consortium and the third time as a subcontractor. That is actually a good question that we're going to put forward to our contracting department. So my first initial thought is that it's not possible because well, you have to first of all take into account that you can register 3 times as a main contractor or a consortium. So but the second part of the question, whether you can apply a second time as a subcontractor, that I don't know. And that's do you have the answer?
For the same lot, you mean?
For the same lot, yeah.
No, we will come back to that in the official answering of the questions, but I don't think that's possible. You can only submit one proposal per lot. Yeah. And also as one entity.
Yeah. But to have a definite answer, we ask you to check the written answers to all of the questions that we will add to the first memorandum of information that will be published, I think, somewhere next week. Then maybe the last question for today, because we're already over the time. Will the consultant receive a letter of presentation or of introduction, you can say, of CBI to help connect to European buyers? Thomas, do you have an answer for that?
Good question. And if it helps the research, I think we're willing to do that.
But at the same time, I would say it's not very common. So we expect, we judge the tender based on the network of a supplier. So if you do not have an existing network in Europe, you have to take that into account because the other tenders will have a network. So I think that's also good to notice that. Okay, so I think with that, one more time, I think it's good to mention that all of the people that participated today will receive the presentation. In the presentation, you also find the links to the tender documentation and to TenderNet. So I hope that we answered most of your questions for today. Thomas, can I give you the last words to close the session?
Yeah, no, let me just thank you all for being here today and by that have your interest in our tender. And that's most we appreciate that, and we hope this session has helped you to start with this tender and submit the proposal, and also if this tender has helped you to make your decision whether to tender or not, because now we made you more clear what we request from our suppliers in this. So I wish you, if you are going to submit a tender, I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you for joining us today. And you'll receive more information via TenderNet from us.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.